Have you ever heard of a donkey that spoke, an axe that floated, or a man who was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire? The Bible is full of incredible stories that many people have never heard of. And in this video, I'm going to show you 10 surprising facts from the scriptures that will definitely leave you speechless. Get ready to learn, be amazed, and be edified by the Word of God in a light, deep, and revealing way. From the Old to the New Testament, these facts show that God works in ways that go far beyond human logic. Let's go. Fact 1. An animal spoke to a man in Numbers 22:28. It says, "Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and she said to Balaam, 'What have I done to you that you have beaten me these 3 times?'" Imagine walking down the street, you stub your toe on a rock, and your dog turns to you and says, "Have you thought about watching where you're going?" Sounds like something from a Disney movie, right? But this really happened in the Bible. Balaam, a greedy prophet, went against God's will. On his journey, his donkey saw an angel of the Lord and tried to turn aside. Angry, Balaam beat the donkey. Then God literally opened the donkey's mouth to question Balaam. This is the only biblical record of an animal speaking in an articulate way. The text makes it clear. It wasn't a trick or metaphor, but a direct act of God. God can use anything, even the least expected things, to warn us. Has He already given you a sign that you ignored? Fact 2. A man survived 3 days inside a fish. In Jonah 1:17 it says, "Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights." Have you ever been locked in a tight place for a few hours and felt desperate? Now imagine being inside the belly of a fish for 3 days with no light, no space, and the smell of rotten fish all around. Jonah ran from God's calling to preach in Nineveh. In the middle of his escape, he was swallowed by a great fish, where he stayed for 3 days until he repented. In Hebrew, the fish doesn't have a specific name. It could be a whale or another large sea creature. Jesus uses this event as a symbol of his death and resurrection, Matthew 12:40, making Jonah a sort of prophetic shadow. Even when we try to run away from God, He pursues us with love, and sometimes He places us in uncomfortable situations to transform us. Fact 3. A dead man came back to life by touching bones. In 2 Kings 13:21, it says, "And it happened as they were bearing a man, that behold, they spied a band of robbers, and they cast the man into the sepulchre of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood up on his feet." Now hold on to this. Someone was being hurriedly buried, and by mistake, they threw the body into the wrong tomb, the tomb of a prophet. When the dead man touched Elisha's bones, he came back to life. Israel was under attack. During a hasty burial, a dead body was thrown into the tomb of the prophet Elisha. When the body touched the prophet's bones, life returned instantly. This shows the residual power of God's Spirit in the prophet's life, even after death. It is also a foreshadowing of what God would do with Jesus and with all those who believe. God's presence in someone can impact lives, even after death. What kind of legacy are you leaving? Fact 4. The sun stopped in the sky for an entire day. In Joshua 10:13, it says, "So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the people had revenge upon their enemies." The sun stopped in the midst of the heaven and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. Have you ever had such a good day that you wished it would never end? Well, Joshua had such an important day of battle that he prayed, and the sun literally stopped in the sky. During a battle against 5 enemy kings, Joshua cried out to God for the day to last longer, and God made time stop, ensuring Israel's victory. Many try to explain this scientifically, but the focus here is the miracle. God controls time and the heavens. The text doesn't say that the earth stopped spinning, but that time was extended supernaturally. When you are at the center of God's will, even time works in your favor. Fact 5. A man was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. In 2 Kings 2:11 it says, "And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Hollywood dreams of creating epic scenes, but the Bible already has one that no production has ever surpassed. A man being taken to heaven in a chariot of fire, pulled by flaming horses. Elijah, the prophet who confronted kings and made fire fall from heaven, reaches the end of his mission, but he doesn't die. He is taken alive to heaven in front of Elisha, his successor. Elijah is one of the only men in the Bible who didn't die, along with Enoch, Genesis 5:24. That's why many scholars connect him to the two mysterious prophets in Revelation 11. When you walk with God, the end of your story can be more glorious than you imagine. Fact 6. A hand appeared writing on a wall. In Daniel 5:5, it says, "And the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace." Imagine being at a party full of food, drink, and music, and suddenly a ghostly hand appears floating in the air and begins writing on the wall. That's exactly what King Belshazzar saw. Belshazzar mocked God by using sacred cups from the temple at a pagan feast. Suddenly, a hand appeared and wrote, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, prophesying the fall of his kingdom that very night. That very night, the Medes and Persians invaded Babylon, and the king was killed exactly as the writing foretold. God never loses control. When men exalt themselves, he writes the end of the story with his own fingers. Fact 7. A prophet made iron float on water. In 2 Kings 6:5-6 it says, "But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water. And he cried and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Well, where did it fall? And he showed him the place. And he cut down a stick and cast it in there. And the iron did swim." Have you ever seen iron float on water? Not even the Titanic managed that. But a prophet named Elisha did it with an axe. While building a lodging for the prophet's disciples, one of them lost a borrowed axe in the Jordan River. Elisha cut a stick, threw it in the water, and the iron simply floated. This miracle may seem simple, but it shows God's care for the small things. The prophet cared about something that wasn't even his, and God acted. God cares about even the things you think are too small to pray about. Nothing is insignificant when it comes from the heart. Fact 8. A man lived nearly 1,000 years. In Genesis 5:27, it says, "And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died." Can you imagine someone born in the Middle Ages and still being alive today? It would be like meeting someone who saw the Tower of Babel up close. That was Methuselah. Methuselah was the grandson of Enoch and the grandfather of Noah. He lived 969 years, the longest-lived human in the Bible. The name Methuselah may mean, when he dies, judgment will come. And you know what happened? He died in the same year as Noah's flood, Genesis 7:6. God is patient, far more than we can imagine, but the time of grace will one day end. Fact 9. An army was defeated with torches and pots and judges. It says, "The 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers. They held the torches in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands, and they shouted, 'A sword for the Lord and for Gideon.' Would you face an army with a trumpet, a torch, and a clay pot? It sounds crazy, but that's how God defeated 135,000 enemies with just 300 men. Gideon leads a small army against the Midianites. God tells him to reduce the soldiers to show that the victory would come from him. With strategy, faith, and noise, the enemies panic and kill each other. The number 300 symbolizes a small and unlikely army. It's a perfect picture of how God likes to use the improbable to accomplish the impossible. You don't need many resources. When God is with you, little becomes enough. Fact 10. Jesus paid taxes with a coin found in a fish's mouth. In Matthew 17:27, it is written, "But so that we do not offend them, go to the sea throw in a hook, and take the first fish that comes up. And when you open its mouth, you will find a coin. Take that and give it to them for me and you. If you think Jesus only performed miracles to heal, hold on to this one. He paid taxes with a coin found inside a fish's mouth. The temple tax collectors asked if Jesus paid the tribute. He told Peter to catch the first fish, and inside it would be the exact amount, a double drachma. This is the only miracle of Jesus that involves supernatural financial provision. It shows that he provides and does so with style. When you obey, God provides, even in the most unlikely ways. Leave a comment. Which of these facts impacted you the most? Or do you know any other curious ones that you'd like to see in the next video? Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on the bell for more revealing